Welcome back to Sales Development Secrets. I'm Steve Eror. Today's guest has spent some quality time on every side of the credit union world. She sold lending protection, she sold memberships and research, and now she runs new logo sales at her current company. And it's one of the bigger core banking software companies that exists. So Dawn Denton, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, tell us. I mean, I high level intro, but tell me a little bit about you guys, what you're doing, and yeah.
Yeah, Dawn Denton, as you alluded to, I have been in the sales space, I guess, for a little bit over 30 years, which just doesn't seem possible, but I guess I'm that old. um, but yeah, so I've worked majority of my career. I was with a company called True Stage, in a lot of different roles that you kind of highlighted there. I also worked for Filene Research Institute as the chief growth officer over there, really in a sales leadership role there as well. And now, like as you mentioned, I'm with Temenos as a sales director over the new logo sales here in North America, specifically working with credit unions and community banks. So the last 25 years or so have really focused on the credit union space.
Mhm.
And prior to that, I did a little community banking, and now, of course, working with both credit unions and community banks.
It's interesting that the, the group that you sell to, the credit unions, the community banks. Um, well, most times in tech, you can hide behind, technology. You can hide behind the email. You can hide behind, what have you. The technology as a whole. Hide behind the AI even. Um, you you mentioned kind of in the credit union space how human to human it is.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that and kind of the you know how that's impacted kind of your selling and
Yeah. So the credit union space is a very, I'll say, unique and special place because it is very relationship driven. So they're very focused on the good for members. Member driven. They're owned by the members. Their boards are usually volunteers that are also members of the credit unions. And so everything is about people helping people, and selling into that space is very important that you understand that, and understand the importance of, I'll say, the human element of selling into that space.
yeah. One of the things you said when we were preparing was that we read people for a living, right?
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I kind of dive into that and tell me what you meant by that.
Yeah. So, well, when you talk about sales and building relationships, it is reading people, right? So I think that's one of the things that COVID had presented a real big challenge for the door-to-door salesmen that have been out there over the
Hmm.
years, because all of a sudden they're put behind a screen, or in a camera or over a phone, things like that. And so being able to read the room, being able to read people, being able to have the conversations that are real conversations. It's not just about the product you're selling, or a message that you're trying to deliver. It's more about who are the people that you're delivering it to, what's important to them, why does this solution or this conversation matter to them, and how can you connect those dots, and then also recognizing when they don't connect, and
Hmm.
not being forceful in the sense that this isn't the right solution, or this isn't the right timing, maybe, that being able to read that, and read the room, read the people that are in front of you, to understand where they are, both maybe personally and professionally, maybe budget wise, maybe timing wise. Being able to read that, and knowing that sometimes things aren't now, or maybe that things aren't, this isn't the right time, or maybe this is just the wrong, the wrong solution for this person. But being able to recognize that is something that's, critical in a sales role.
Why is that? I mean, it's I believe the same thing wholeheartedly, but I'd love to get your perspective on why that is so critical.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think especially in a an organization or those driven verticals that we have in the credit union space specifically, recognizing that is critical. I mean, I think about what their mission is all about their member, right? And their you know what drives them is to do the things that are right for the member, to touch the member in the right
Hmm.
way, maybe to help them. Think about the, credit unions got started, years and years ago when, you know, there was maybe a need for a 100 or $200 loan. And, sometimes financial institutions don't think it's worth it to do those things. And that's
Right.
how the credit union cooperative started is, oh, wait, you know, these little loans mean big things to these individuals.
Yeah. Tell me, so does that mean, so what role, we talk a lot about technology on this podcast and its role in the sales role. Does that mean that it's such a human to human relationship driven motion that like the technology doesn't play a role in that at all, or
Are you referring to AI?
technology as a whole? So AI certainly,
Yeah.
but yeah, where can it be used well, and where's the kind of the trap
Yeah.
spots?
Well, I mean, if you think about where, yeah, I'll lean specifically into some of the AI technology that has really been helpful for sales leaders. I think, some people are very afraid of it. And then there's other people that, can spot it out and know that that's not a human that I'm talking to. So, there's important ways to utilize it. One of the things that I think about is, 30 years ago when I was first, knocking on doors and trying to, build my brand and, work through, building relationships with organizations. I did a lot of research on my own, whether it be through the internet or through people that I knew that knew the individual that I was meeting with. It got easier as the internet got more, robust, where you could use, different social media platforms to maybe find out, interests of individuals, or what kind of organizations they've, participate in outside of their current role at work and things like that. Nowadays, I mean, you can just plug that into a lot of the different AI technologies and get a lot of information about an
Hmm.
individual. Of course, you have to validate it. You can't just, use it
Sure.
and pray that it's right. But
Right.
it does save a lot of time. And so I think there's a lot of things that you can do in that realm to help you understand um, who you're visiting with. I still think it's important to find the human element in too, right? So if you do know somebody that, if I'm meeting with you, Steve, and I happen to know that you also know my colleague Joe, you know, what's the commonalities there? Maybe I bring that up to you, maybe I bring that up to Joe, and say, we have a common thread there, right? And
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
those kind of things really do pull on the relationship strengths.
Talk to me about the handwritten note, that motion that you've done. Like because I find so much value in that. I take all my notes, in pen, and when someone sends me a handwritten note, I keep it,
Yeah.
even
It
probably when I
makes a
shouldn't.
big difference with that handwritten note. So when I first started my career, and literally, I would say we were road warriors. I mean, you were on the road. I had a fleet vehicle that was paid for by the company because you were out there, door to door, getting meetings, meeting with individuals, things like that. And I think one of the things that I did myself as a young new salesperson, just trying to build a brand for myself, was I carried a group, and I still have them in my bag today. I have a group of just note cards, and I
Mhm.
always had a roll of stamps. And if I met someone new, or had a meeting that maybe I had had a significant conversation, that it was just a habit of getting into a consistent thank you, because I find that if I get back to the home office or back into my work environment, I'll forget to do that. But if I right when I leave, if I feel good about the meeting, a lot of times I would be calling somebody, support staff that might be entering stuff into the system. And then I also would just take the minute to, write, thank you for the time today, maybe some nuggets about some of the conversation we had, and go ahead and just like put it on the mail right there, before I leave the city, stopping at a
Mhm.
post office on my way. And sometimes, people didn't say anything, and sometimes people did. But I know, to your point, that when you get that handwritten note, it's like, wow, they took that extra step to say thanks for the time. And to me, that's an important um, it's an important thing to do, and to show, to express the value that the people have given you the time. People are busy,
Mhm.
and time is the most precious thing that they have. And so when you take the time to thank you for that, I think that goes a long way.
I think too. I wonder that simple motion, because it doesn't have to be anything big. I mean, I think about the one I've got right here on my desk, and it's probably uh, it's like 4 5 lines, like like super simple. Uh, what I mean, I have to imagine, and I'm curious what you think. The impact now versus the impact even 30 years ago. I have to imagine, like I would think that it would almost be greater now.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I know that, in different roles as an executive, I get emails constantly, um, requesting a meeting, trying to get my attention. Either through my inbox, they've, found that, now through texting, there are different texting apps like WhatsApp, or even to regular text. Things are coming through from different individual LinkedIn. Things are coming through, and so it's like, how do you differentiate for yourself from that? How do you grab the attention of someone that you really want to break through? I think we talked about the relationship piece, and doing the research of the relationship, but I also think that looking into the story of why the solution meets their needs, and why should they take this call now, why now,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
those kind of things are important. And sometimes those small little differentiators will at least get a, wow, okay, I'm gonna talk to this individual because they took the time to do this extra step.
Um, One of the, I mean, I want to switch gears just a little bit, but it's something that you'd mentioned means a lot to you. Um, is kind of the role of women in sales orgs, right? The vast majority of podcast guests that we have on this podcast are men. The vast majority of people in sales roles and sales leadership,
Yeah.
uh, are, especially in tech, are men. Um, you you saw or were part of a study that looked into this a little bit and where women stall out. Talk a little bit about, like, switch
Yeah.
into that.
No, it's something that I'm very passionate about. I think that, obviously, as a woman in business, I have three daughters that, I want them to be successful, in whatever endeavors that they choose to go into. And I think that there's been tradition, especially if you go back, 25, 30 years ago, there was definitely um, a stigma, because we could call it the glass ceiling, like things that, were holding women back. And when I was at True Stage, I was actually selected to be a part of a group. It was called the Women's Sales Leadership, and it was really, we were charged with a project to understand why. And at that particular point, there were not many, if any, women in sales leadership at the organization I was at. So A lot of individual contributors, but when it came to getting to that next level, they weren't there. And so it was basically a research project. Is that because they're not applying? Is that because they're not being selected? And it was a little bit of all of that, right? So there was a lot of different things that came out, but I think one of the things that really I leaned into, and the more I speak to women, both in significantly impactful roles like CEO roles, CFO roles, as well as young individuals that are coming in. Um, Women don't tend to uh, think that they are ready
Hmm.
for whatever role it is. And there was actually some statistics, I'd have to look it up, but that men, if they think that they meet 45 to 50% of the job qualifications on a job description, they will go ahead and apply for that
We'll
role
fake
because
it
they
till we
think
make
that,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I can do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas women tend to bow out if they don't feel that they have 100% of the qualifications. And so one of the things that was something that we, discovered when we were doing that research project. And so it's something that I know that group of women that I was in that group with, we still encourage one another, to step in, lean in forward. Just because you don't have that skill doesn't mean you don't have a skill that's actually very comparable to it. And I mean, we can be talking about you know a certain CRM system. Maybe you've never worked with, a certain CRM system, but you've worked on another one. But
Right.
a woman will discredit herself because she didn't work on the one that this particular company is in, even though they're very similar. It's just,
And men will be
making
like,
that.
"Hey, Salesforce and and any CRM, I'm good. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
close
yeah.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah." Uh, what, what to the kind of the young women kind of getting started, and also to the women who are transitioning from the individual contributor role into leadership, right? Because very different advice there. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So, I would say they're different advice, but at the same time, it's actually the same. Um, Especially wanting to be a sales leader or an individual contributor, you are building a brand. And so, what is the brand that you want to build? What do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? And how do you represent that? And how are you consistent with that? Whether that be writing a handwritten note, or always following up when you say that you will, or um, being a fun individual that makes people laugh, or all of those things. And it can be all of those things,
Hmm.
but what is the brand that you want to represent? I think being consistent, being honorable, is who you say you are the things that are the most important. And I would say in both of those roles, I think transitioning to a people leader, um, is a passion that you have or you don't. So there, a lot of people are like, why would you want to be a people leader? You probably are going to make less money than you will as an individual contributor. And so I
Hmm.
think it's one of those things, is like, as an individual contributor, if that's what you want to do, then that's what you do. Versus, a sales leader, the passion is not necessarily that hunt and kill, but the passion is more of, how do I get the person that's in that role to be their best? And when
Hmm.
they're their best, then ultimately it's the best for, me as a people leader, but also for the organization.
I think great advice. I think it's great advice for I think about my daughter in college. Great advice for her as she's thinking about her career, but also I think it's great advice for everybody in general. Like as you're thinking about your career, both of those, and in going into leadership versus being the individual contributor. Um,
I mean,
I
I have people that work for me that would be fantastic people leaders. They have no interest in doing it. Because there's a lot of different pieces of that
Sure.
they don't necessarily want to be bogged down with. Um, And I also think, knowing that, your team, depending on where they are in their career, what do they need from a coach or from a leader, and it's very situational, right? So you
Hmm.
have a brand new individual contributor that might need a little bit more direction and hand holding versus somebody that's been in the industry maybe even longer than me, that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily need that hand holding. But everybody needs a coach. I always say,
Right.
like, even Tiger Woods needs a coach, right? Like,
Yep.
the best of the best, they still need somebody to help them.
And sometimes, I mean, I great example. I'm a big F1 fan, and one of my favorite drivers is Lewis Hamilton. He has uh, the worst title ever. She's the physio, so she's like the physical therapist kind of person for him. But she's actually more like his coach, and she's followed him from team to team, and she is there getting the blockers out of the way so he can do his job.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I mean, he reports to Ferrari because he drives for Ferrari, but in a lot of ways, she's playing the role that you just described as that leader for him,
Yeah.
so he can just do his very best.
Yeah, let me help get the nuances out of the way so that you can be at your best, and that's, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it. Listen, I know you're really passionate about women in sales and women in tech, um, and I saw you like when we first talked about it, how you like lit up. That's something that's really important to you. If there are women or individuals who do have question for you in general, or about women in sales and tech, or what's the best way to reach out to you?
I would probably say my LinkedIn profile would be the best way, and I have had different people reach out, and yeah, I always make time. I always make time for somebody that is, trying to begin their career or improve themselves as an individual contributor or even a sales leader. So, very open to that. And always, I always say, one of the best things that you can do is help others, get to where you are today. So,
I love that. I love that in the sales and tech community, and I love it when I can find someone who's actually genuinely doing that. So thank you
yes.
for doing that, and appreciate everybody subscribing, listening to the podcast, and yeah, we'll catch you guys all in the next one.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.